Hi, hello and welcome back. Welcome to another Onkruid video. Book review, booktuber, book lifestyle, reading YouTube, should you read, you know the drill. Permanent Record, Edward Snowden, autobiographical book, so basically centered around his life and written by himself. Bit of a weird one for me, this video, not the book. I decided to just make the PowerPoint and not write a script, so it's all of the top of the dome piece today. Edward Snowden has recently come up in the media again because after living in exile for like 9 years in Russia, he was not allowed to go back to his original country of the USA, the United States of America, so he was kind of living in exile, in banishment if you will. But now recently Putin, the Russian president, has granted him the Russian citizenship. I am no expert on geopolitics or anything like that, so I have no idea what this actually means for him, if he is allowed to do more now or maybe he is actually allowed to travel again. No idea. Either way, good for him. I'm glad things in his life are finally going his way again, maybe. It's a book I did not buy in Switzerland, which is probably what you were expecting, because based on my previous videos it almost sounds like I came back with like a suitcase for all my clothes and actual needs and then just an additional suitcase filled up with books. No, but I bought this one in Tenerife. So on another vacation in a second-hand bookstore where they had this very picturesque, quaint little corner with English books, and there were some real gems in there. This one, for example, only €3, whereas according to the back, it would normally set me back $18. I am no expert in exchange rates either. I don't know how the dollar compares to the euro nowadays, but 18 compared to 3, I think I came out ahead. As the fans of this channel and especially of this series know, we ask a simple question in the title, should you read it? And we answer it straight away and in a simple fashion as well. And in this case, should you read it? No, you should not. Which sounds very aggressive, especially since I've given the no this vibrant color that immediately jumps out at you. But I want to try and kind of paint a picture a bit, paint a scene of why I think you shouldn't read it and why I think you are better off spending your time elsewhere. If you really want to know about him and his story, I think just reading a newspaper article or watching a video or maybe a documentary on it is better suited for your needs. That is, if you are actually interested in the fact that made him popular, the fact that made him a person worth writing a book about. But that's maybe a bit of a false statement as well, because all humans are unique and special. I think we could write a book on everyone, even on me, for example, even on this weird guy with his husky feet. Whoa. We all have our little intricacies, our own little stories, our own little adventures, and they are all destined to be on a page, or they could be on a page in black and white. But I think Mr. Snowden kind of, you know, missed a bit. He swung for the fences and he didn't quite deliver, which basically sounds like just a defamation of character and that I'm insulting his personal life, because the main reason that I don't advise you to read this book is because it's actually not that adequately focused on his main endeavors, on his whistleblowing activities, on the way he exposed mass surveillance in America and bulk data collection of the people. The book is focused way more on his early life and on the build-up and the decisions he made leading up to the point where he decided to become a whistleblower. And there's almost no attention for the aftermath, but we'll come back to that. Either way, no, I don't think you should read it, but I'm not completely opposed to it either. There's better literary works to spend your time upon, but I mean, it's not necessarily time lost, but it's not time won. Unless if maybe you are in the winter in Alaska and you are snowed in, snowed in, and you really have nothing better to do, try to steer clear of this book. As I talked about already, the story is about this famous whistleblower Ed Snowden, or Edward Snowden, a person that worked for the NSA, the CIA, worked for Dell, worked for a whole lot of contracting agencies, which were kind of like more undercover jobs for just in general the intelligence community in America. His work involved a lot of cloud making and a lot of systems administration tasks. Basically, he was kind of the backbone that the organizations like the NSA and the CIA, which are main defensive intelligence agencies structured around the defense of the American people. And he was the backbone for their online life, for their databases, for their cloud services, for their storage purposes. He was kind of like an extremely well-educated IT guy, where you could not only go for questions like, hey, I can't open Internet Explorer anymore, but also for questions like, hey, I uploaded this file while I was still at my home base in Vancouver. but I want to access it now while I'm on an international mission in Afghanistan. How do I do that? Which is still probably poorly explained, but all you need to know is that he was very tech savvy. He knew his way around computers and he used that to his advantage. After 9/11, he got this surge of patriotism throughout his blood and he wanted to actually join the military. Through an injury, he was not that fit for footwork anymore, but he still wanted to contribute to the safety of his heimat, of his place of origin, of the country he loved, or loved back then at least. And that's when he decided to get into the technological side of the army. The book focuses very heavily on his early years, his childhood, his adolescence, and his early years working for the government. And in that way, it focuses on the build-up of separate little decisions and little turns and twists he takes in his life to lead up to the point where he actually becomes a whistleblower. The aftermath, what happened after his whistleblowing act, after he exposed the corrupt tendencies of the NSA and the CIA in America, is very much less in the spotlight. It's almost non-existent in the book, really. I believe the actual event of his whistleblowing happens at like page 210 out of 300, and you can imagine that there's not much room left to then talk about what happens afterwards. 210 is even, I think, a bit of an understatement. I think it's more like 250, so you have only 50 pages left to talk about what actually happens then, and it's just not there, it doesn't deliver. What it does deliver on, though, is also a story of how a person, a real human being, can see the error in his ways and in the ways of his country that's overarching him. I think that is also a main aspect of the story and a theme that definitely gripped me. It definitely hit me. It made an emotional impact, you know? Seeing how someone that normally just blindly trusts in the overarching structures above his head that are defending him, that are giving him shelter, kind of starting to question them, starting to ethically question them. Like, are they still in line with the purposes and the mission they actually set out to accomplish? And then transforming this cognitive dissonance into action, into coming up for the people. One of the most powerful lines in the book is, for example, that he thought he was working for the government and the public at once, but it actually took him like 30 years to realize that those were two separate entities, and that's powerful stuff. What do I like about it? The pros, I've mentioned some of them already, but oh damn, the high school is having its running practice again outside in our street. It's important to have the discussion. Pro number one, and also the most important part, I think. Back then, it was less well known than nowadays that the government or that other agencies are always kind of spying on your online work, on what you're doing on your computer. Hello, Mr. FBI agent Frank that is watching me record this video right now. Just leave me the fuck alone, bro. I'm just trying to do my goddamn job. Just shut the fuck up. But for me, it's not really, a big deal because I'm already recording this and deciding to put this out there on the internet. Either way, still, he actually talked about like the dystopian situation, which is a reality where he was just looking through a webcam and he was looking at people that had no idea they were being looked at, and that's disturbing. Your emails, your online calls, your video conferences, the documents you downloaded or the documents you spread around, they could see it all just by the click of a button, to make it simple. And I think it's important to have a discussion whether this is allowed and this is supposed to be allowed. Is it actually still benefiting for the people? Is it still ensuring their safety, or is it just collecting data for the sake of collecting data? It's something that has been more and more in the spotlight, more and more in the news lately, or at least in the last couple of years, the past couple of years, especially with figures like Mark Zuckerberg having to appear in court for stuff like that. But back then, when he was blowing his whistle and he was telling people like, yo, this is not okay, it blew up the world. Of course, it was a big revelation. They did not expect something like that to be possible. And especially since privacy is such a basic human right nowadays in a world where we are always online, always connected, always able to be videotaped. Everybody can just pull out their phone and record whatever you're doing. It's important to discuss it. It's important to listen to the public opinion and to have the lawmakers also make laws about it. And that's something I think this book continues. It's a continuation of his call to action, his call to arms, like, hey, stand up to this injustice. It flows nicely out of that, and it reminds the people, because it came out a couple of years after his whistleblowing act, of course. It reminds the people like, hey, don't forget they did this, and don't forget they probably still are doing this. That's where the second pro comes in. It's activating, inspiring. Not necessarily to be a whistleblower yourself, even though that's definitely also a thing he wants to accomplish with the book, clearly, but also just to do good for the world in a general sense. Think about the broader public instead of like your own needs. And maybe put your own needs aside, your own safety aside sometimes, if you think that it could be better for the general population of the world to do so. That's exactly what he did. He kind of sacrificed his life and everything he knew up to that point, everyone he knew up to that point. He put all of that in jeopardy, in danger, just to make sure that he could spread a message out there of injustice being done. I'm not gonna expose any government or anything like that, but it does inspire me to do small good things, you know? To be more honest as well. And to not always be snooping around online. We've all had these phases where we are just like clicking through profiles online to see what people are up to. What is this person up to? Are they still married? How is their child doing? That's an ugly profile picture. What are his previous profile pictures? Why did he change it? Is he still working at that place? Did he like that South Park episode or not? Does he have a Goodreads profile? Which books does he read? Oh damn, he's into right-wing politics. Let me shit on his doorstep for a second. No, we need to steer clear of that. Have people have some privacy. And that's also a call to action, or a call to caution rather, for yourself. Be careful about what you're putting online a little bit. Think about that there's always people watching, even when it's not a higher up governmental institution, FBI agent Frank looking at you. Bro, for real, just get off my dick, leave me alone. No, even like your family and stuff can see whatever you put online, so be cautious with it a little bit, you know? It could come back to bite you in the ass. And then a third pro, and a one that appeals to me dearly because I always like the psychological, the personality, the emotional side of the story. It's a beautiful portrayal of his loneliness and guilt in his endeavors. He isolates himself literally by going to Hong Kong to speak with the journalists about his whistleblowing activities, but also mentally, also metaphysically. He puts himself in this own plane of existence. There's no one else around. It's just him. And he does this on purpose. He has to sacrifice all of his loving relationships to not put people around him in danger. And that makes him feel incredibly guilty, especially towards his girlfriend Lindsay and also towards his mother. He had to disappear without a trace to make sure that they were still safe. And I think his feelings are beautifully described in the book, his feelings about those situations. But my answer to the simple question was no, you should not read it, so it can't all be positive, right? First con, technological terms. A lot of abbreviations, a lot of computer terms, a lot of technology words, and it's a bit overloaded with them sometimes, especially if you're not interested in American governmental facilities and agencies like Fort Meade, and there's the NSA, and then there's the Russian FBI, which is called the FSB, the Federal Security Service, and then there's, you know, it's just a list that keeps on going on. And he also has this notion that after he mentions an organization and then their abbreviation once, he can use that same abbreviation 20 pages later, but by then you have already completely forgotten about that. As I have made abundantly clear already, I think, I don't really like the focus on his past in this book. I get that it's an autobiography and that's exactly what they are supposed to be about. They have to like go over the timeline of a person's existence and show it in its entirety, show it fully, but that's not exactly what I was looking for. I was really hoping to get more insight into his whistleblowing and the effects of that. No, it was way more focused on him as a person, which is to be expected, but for me personally, it kind of forms a bit of a con, a bit of it. There's a little bit, just a tiny, you know, just like a little when you're like, I don't really like this, like. The largest con, the main thing I disliked about the book, which ties into everything I've said already, is the length and the content. It was a bit over 300 pages, I think about 333 pages, something like that. And I think it could have been at least 100 pages shorter. If he would have been a bit more concisive in his storytelling, a bit more focused on the important details, a bit less like, oh, I had this colleague that did this, and then sometimes in our army base over here, they would print out constitutions and you can get them to their desk, and I would always take it to my desk because normally we are such a high security facility that you're not supposed to have just papers lying around on your desk, so having the constitution was this big deal. And it's interesting stuff, but for a person that was really looking into or looking for information on his whistleblowing and concisely that, it was a bit disappointing. And then a final small con, which is really just my personal opinion. He missed an opportunity for a more beautiful and thrilling and dragging you along type of storytelling. All the way at the end of the book, he finally goes back to Lindsay's perspective in all this, and he adds her diary fragments of the days when he first left to go do his whistleblowing in Hong Kong. And just introducing those fragments throughout the chapters in the book, I think that would have been so beautiful. Even maybe in chronological order, but that would mean that they would still all be kind of situated towards the end of the book, because as I told you, only towards the end of the book does he actually leave to go do his whistleblowing. But I think it would be an immaculate form of storytelling if he would just include one of those diary fragments after also the beginning chapters, when there's no talk about whistleblowing yet and he's still just in his early years, but already you can see the impact that he had on Lindsay, on his lifelong partner. I think that would have been more enthralling, that would have been more intriguing, that would have really heightened the emotional impact and the intensity and the relational part of the book. But that's my personal opinion. It's something an editor probably knows way better than me. Maybe it's not fit for storytelling at all, and maybe it would have just been confusing for the reader, but I personally would have really enjoyed that. All in all, I think you can hear in my pros and cons list that I'm not really overtly that negative about the book. It's not that I hate it, it's not that I actually dislike it, but it's just less likable than I would have hoped it to be. It's not a life changer, it's not even a day-to-day changer, it doesn't have the impact on me that I thought it would, but it's an interesting topic to think about. And therefore, you could read it, but in my opinion, no, you shouldn't. There's more interesting, more thought-provoking books out there. I'm sure that there are books out there that really just swipe you off your feet, even books on the same topics, on topics of privacy, of communication, of language, of spying, espionage, but this just ain't quite it. I don't regret reading it. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars on Goodreads, which still passes the vibe check, of course, but all in all, I expected more from it, and I want to keep you from that disappointment. Thanks a lot for watching. If you do decide to give it a read, or if you have also already read it also, please leave a comment. I am desperate for some online attention. Ask my FBI agent Frank right there, my man, high five. Alright buddy, I got you. High five. He has been seeing me like grind in this YouTube landscape, making shorts, making videos, creating a TikTok account, creating Instagram, and he's just like, damn, this man really wants some validation, so give it to me. Comment about this book. Did you like it? Did you enjoy it? Do you have other things to say about it? Do you agree with me? Just please give me some attention. Just give me something, man. Just go ahead. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.